I never know how to address you because I feel like you're Robert Duvall. And on the other hand, we've done this a number of times.
It's like your name, Bob or Bobby.
Okay.
Exactly. Informal.
Okay. So, just so audiences won't think that I'm being too familiar. But anyway, Bob Duvall, welcome back to Dallas.
Thank you. Nice to be here.
You are here for a very happy occasion, and that is you are the executive producer of this wonderful documentary,
Yes.
The Portrait of Billy Joe.
Billy Joe Shaver, the great country singer and songwriter. Yeah. It's a special little film. And Luciana, my wife, she directed it. And being from northern Argentina, but she heard Billy Joe sing a song when we had a cast party during the shooting of The Apostle in Louisiana. And she was so taken with him, she wanted to do a documentary, her first one. And she jumped in and did it. And she's finishing one on Horton Foote now, the Texas playwright. And also on Bob Easton, the dialectician guy, he's also from Texas. So she's doing 3. But this is the first, and it's turned out well, I think. Al Mazel's the great documentarian from New York, liked it a lot, and kind of helped her a little bit of coaching in the beginning or ideas. And so she's off to a new thing, and she learned how to use the editing machine in 3 days, and which is great, but you don't tell an Argentine how good they are because they have big heads to begin with, the Argentines. It reminds me of Texas a little bit, Argentina. Kind of good, healthy sense of a collective ego, you know. But it was a wonderful thing working with Billy Joe. He's such an interesting character. Just he's an icon in this state, really, a Texas treasure.
You know, Bob, he really should be a bigger star than he is. I mean,
Oh,
everybody
yeah.
should know his name like they know Willie Nelson.
Absolutely. But Willie Nelson called him maybe the best songwriter alive in the documentary. And I don't know what it is, if it's a natural sense of holding back he has, or I don't know quite what it is. But around Austin, he's a hero, an icon. And there are people in different parts, even in Europe and the United States, oh yeah, Billy Joe, we love his work. But collectively, people don't know him, and they should. You're right. He should be really well known. Maybe someday he will be, but because he's so authentic and so steeped in his reality.
Was it difficult to get him to cooperate?
No, not at all. He was open to it. He had turned other people down in the past, but he was very open to it, and he kind of led us to things. He led us to things, to people who interviewed the 102-year-old school teacher that first encouraged him to write, because he had written a poem called Space when he was 13. It was just marvelous for a young man. And so he would lead us to these different things and call up, and he was very cooperative, immensely so. And he was very loose in front of the camera, because I used him in The Apostle. He was so natural. Second day of acting on The Apostle, he said, hell, I got this deal licked, he said, you know, like he did. So he was totally open to it and cooperative.
Who conducted the interviews?
Luciana. It was all hers. I just was kind of like the bank. We had some extra money left over from production, so we decided to make several documentaries. And it was all her vision and her editing, everything. So I just stood in the background and gave her carte blanche.
She did a beautiful job of opening him up.
Oh, I think so. And it was easy because he was relaxed around us. And so it was not a chore at all to open him up. He really just, it happened, really, kind of a happening.
What was the most difficult thing for him? Which part of it?
Well, I guess talking about some personal problems and tragedies he had, but in telling them, that's what's good about this kind of film, because you incorporate the difficulty of telling, and that's as much a reality as the easy part of telling things. So it was all gold. It was all rich, deep gold that you found in him, whether it was difficult for him to reveal something or easy. It was all part of the process in this kind of film, I think.
What do you think was the turning point in his career when he stopped being such a wild person and really became a born-again Christian?
Well, I think there were several born-agains along the way. I think that, I really can't answer that. I just know that let me put it this way. When he lost his wife that he married 3 times, his mother-in-law, and his son, all in the period of a year and a half, and then he came out pretty clean and clear. That's an amazing thing through that sorrow. And I said to him, Billy Joe, how did you manage to do that? He said, Jesus. Now that guy Rick Bragg wrote a book called It's All Over But the Shouting, that guy from Alabama that worked for the New York Times, a reporter. He said in New York, if you talk about Jesus in everyday conversation, that you're perceived as a nut. Down here in the South and the Southwest, below the Mason-Dixon line, you can talk about Jesus in everyday conversation and not be perceived as a nut, but as a normal, intelligent human being. And so that's the way I see Billy Joe. He really, you cannot condescend to those perceptions he has of his faith, dealing with his faith and about Jesus. So he really has brought him through, and I think that's the turning point now in his life, was since the death of his loved ones. He has a lot to give still, and I think being as talented as he is, maybe now, hopefully he'll be recognized more universally. But I think that was a there were many turning points, I think, but I think that was the final turning point in the final thrust of his life, I think.
What is his age now?
Pardon?
What is his age now?
Billy, I think we went to his birthday party a couple of months ago in Austin. I think he turned 65.
And is he in good health, or?
I think he is, because he lost weight since we saw him, since then even, and I think he's in pretty good health. I mean, he's had bypass, this, that, heart, trouble, and he goes where they put the old-fashioned way of taking the blood in and putting it back in to clean him out. He goes through a lot of things, but I think in his own kind of complex ways, he's in pretty good health. I think because he's in pretty good state mentally, that it helps to dictate good health, I think. So I think now his final journey, I think there's a lot left there for him to discover for his talent and his writing and whatever. And he's doing more acting parts too as well now.
The documentary is going to be shown at the Deep Ellum Film Festival.
Yeah, Monday night.
And I'll put all the particulars in later in the story.
Right.
But have you had other festivals?
Yeah, the Austin, and then we didn't go, but I think it was at the Nashville, and then there were 1 or 2 others. Yeah, people seem to respond to it nicely.
But
because it's a kind of a documentary like Al Mazel's and some others do. It's like, they said, well, don't you want to have Willie Nelson talk about Billy Joe? Don't you want to have this interview? I said, no. We don't go with the interview route. It's more hanging on the subject, being with the subject completely for an hour, not talking about it, no interviews, so really no voiceovers, not like you see on conventional A&E, those things. Just a portrait or following that person. And that's what, I think that's what makes it kind of special and enriching.
is there any chance that it will have a run in theaters?
I don't think so. Documentaries are, I don't think they're embraced that much, because there's not that much money involved, commercially speaking. There are special avenues for documentaries, I think, in theaters or festivals or whatever. And I've always loved documentaries. I like to look at them to help my acting, the purity of the behavior, rather than going to other movies, rather than going to artifice. You go to documentaries. And I always like to say, the great Marlon Brando used to watch Candid Camera when he was a young actor, which is another form of that kind of pure behavior route, so to speak.
Is it currently and now available on DVD?
Yes, the DVD is out. It's the Amazon.com. I don't know the
Yes,
.com,
I have all the particulars.
Yeah,
we
definitely.
can work
It's
that
doing
in.
pretty well, but I think people should buy it, and for Christmas presents and things, it's nice because there's a good sense of positive humanity that's embodied in the documentary, and the negatives aren't dwelt on in a over the top way. I mean, there's a sanguine thing about, a hopeful thing about his life and what he projects now. And I think that it's nice for people to have the DVD. I know my friends in Houston, Danny Davis and his friend, they're a bunch of crazy oil drillers, kind of middle class rednecks, and they're tough guys, and they've seen it about 6 or 7. They love it. They just love and some of them are coming up Monday night from Houston, and just not just maybe partially because it's a Texas subject, but also the humanity involved in it, that people can relate to, men and women.
You said that you and Luciana are going to do a documentary on Horton Foote.
Yeah, she's finished it now.
Oh, it's finished.
And she's gonna. I think he saw it the other day and left a message that he liked it. Yeah, I think it's very nice. Yeah. Once again, she just hangs on him for an hour, and that's the best. And then she's doing one on Bob Easton, the dialectician from Hollywood, who is also from Texas. The big guy with the long beard and the white hair. I got him on Gods and Generals to help with the Virginia dialects. When he came here, but he said, "Teach me a Virginia dialect," and he said, "Well, there's 32 different dialects from the Piedmont country over to the seacoast, so this guy's amazing." So she's really into it, but I have to back her up a little bit because let's finish one before we get to the other. So, but this is still kind of an aftermath of the finish of Billy Joe, still going around and getting people interested in the DVD because it's interesting. And the DVD, I guess, is a new phenomenon that I can't keep up with all these new things, the .com and the internet and everything, but that's the way to go now.
Well, let's talk about Robert Duvall and his movies. What are you working on?
I'm in between. The Night in Old Mexico fell through, strange set of circumstances. It's an original script by Bill Whitler from Texas, a great part, like a great nephew to the guy I played in Lonesome Dove, but it's on hold now. Whether it'll ever be done, I don't know.
What's the problem?
Money, control, egos, I don't know. I've never been really explained to me. But I'm working on several things. I have a friend of mine that's written the most original Western I've ever read. It is wonderful, and Walter Hill will direct. It's called Daughters of Joy. It's a wonderful period Western. Perhaps the most authentic dialogue I've ever read. Then there's several, more things come my way now than before, maybe because it's the competition or the compatriots are thinning out. I don't know. And we're working on one with New Line, and then there's a wonderful original story that's a nice script about a guy in Tennessee in the 30s that went to his own funeral. 8,000 people came. It's a true story. So there's that, and there's several other things we're working on. So there's a lot of nice things in the making. And then Jimmy Gray's going to do, the wonderful director, James Caan said was the best young director he's worked with since Coppola. He did the Yards and Little Odessa. He's got a project that he's asked me to be in. So there's wonderful things brewing, more now than when I was young. So I feel good about that,
When people come up to you, which film are they most likely to call to mind?
Well, it depends on different parts of the country, obviously. It's still Lonesome Dove, I think, for most people, but The Godfather. And then different ones, like if you go to North Carolina, it's Days of Thunder, because you'll see 12-year-old kids hanging over a car doing mechanical work. If you're you see a boombox, "Hey man, I've seen you in Colors," a kid going that. So they're different, different perceptions in different areas, people. But I would say overall, Lonesome Dove was my favorite.
It is your favorite?
Yes, ma'am. Yes. Yeah, it's very much so. And Luciana hadn't even seen it yet because it's too long to sit through. I said, maybe after I'm gone you'll see it. But that was the one mostly. I told Ann Richards I'd come to Texas and run for governor and beat her, and she said she agreed because of Lonesome Dove. But had 6 or 7 hours to develop a character, which was nice, and it was such a great book. Lonesome Dove was such a great piece of writing, just so great.
What movies have you seen this year that have impressed you?
I'm trying to think of what I've seen. We've been traveling some. I'm trying to think. I've seen some that I've liked, yeah, but at the moment I can't think of any this current year. the performances I've seen, like Choppers, the guy from Australia, you see that? The guy was phenomenal. A couple of years ago, I liked Brad Pitt in the thing where he played the crazy gypsy in the English film. I'm trying to think. I'm sure there's things I've seen, but I haven't seen a lot this year so far because we've been traveling and so forth. But you know, I mean, there are always good movies made. Francis Coppola said there haven't been any good movies made since the 80s, but I disagree. 70s, I disagree with that. There's some wonderful movies. So, but you know, I just can't think of any right now that I've seen lately because I haven't really been to the theater much. But
So
there are good movies being made.
because some people have a feeling, and I think critics as well, that the industry now has turned around into being just a commercial mill.
Well, that's true. That's true, but there's independent filmmakers that have, in the 70s, it was as if they were independent filmmakers within the system, with Coppola, you know, Scorsese and Altman and those people. But now people are making independent films, and some of them I think are very good. So you can't write off the filmmaking process altogether because of the big commercial aspects of Hollywood, but because there are independent films being made. And still, once in a while, they do make a good film in Hollywood, but I think they would rather make an $80 million movie than $10 million movies, knowing the $80 million movie might fail anyway. I mean, what did they spend for Troy, $120 million?
Something like that.
I thought it was average at best, you know. And they had a lot of money, talent, but they like to think big, and then the people out there get fired to the tune of $20 million, and then they go to another company, you know. So make these big blockbusters. I don't quite, you know, get the concept, but you know, it's. But there's a lot of young people. I think now instead of becoming writers, they want to become filmmakers, and they go into filmmaking, you know, wanting to be directors and so forth. So I want to see the thing with Billy Bob Thornton on a Texas football. I want to see that.
Friday Night Lights.
Have you seen it?
Yes, I have.
Is it okay?
Yeah.
I want to see it because, you know, when we worked on secondhand lines in Austin a year and a half ago, almost 2 years, we went to a 5A high school game on a Friday night. I forget the name of it. Earl Campbell's son was a running back. And it was in the rain. It was like they had a marching band doing it. I mean, Texas has this high school football, but they send all the a lot of the good players to Oklahoma. That's why Oklahoma always beats them. But that's quite a phenomenon. And I think that's true. The true American sport, almost more than baseball now, football, because so many. Because we own that sport. Basketball we don't anymore, really. Baseball, some of the great infielders come from the Caribbean and so forth. But American football is, you know, and coming from these high schools. Old Lawrence Elkins says they have great high school footballs in Pennsylvania. Bring them down here. Plano, Texas will whip them. You know?
Is there some role that you're just so dying to play?
Well, I wanted to do that one in Night in Old Mexico. That one I wanted to do. It may never happen, but things you plan to do sometimes, and sometimes when something comes around the corner by an accident, sometimes that's better than the things you develop with a company and readers and from the ground up. Sometimes what comes around the corner is the best thing. And there's nothing really I look to play now, but sometimes when it comes up and say, wow, this is really terrific, it seems by accident almost, by coincidence. So there's nothing I dream to play really, or maybe direct one more film maybe, but you know, it's when it happens, it happens. And that's a nice kind of phenomenon for me.
Do you agree with the people who say that Brando was the greatest actor of his century?
A lot of people say that. Well, I had a great respect for Marlon Brando, a great respect. And let me say this, that may be. I mean, there was everybody, you could write a book or whatever saying when Brando was king. Because when we were young actors, I mean, during the course of a day, the name Brando passed our lips many, many times. I used to hang out with Dustin Hoffman, Gene Hackman, and he was a great actor. I have seen performances that equal his by young actors today. Even some people say I think the young actors are better than ever now because the bar has been raised because of guys like Brando. But as far as a collective body and just kind of an aura, he's the guy really. What he's left. But the pity of it all, he could have done much more. I didn't know him that well, but I said to him on several occasions, you should have played Othello. He would have been a great Othello with his passion and his great intensity. And he could have done more than he did, but I think he became very self-destructive. He got heavy and fat. He didn't like the filmmaking process or acting. He didn't want his children on the set, and I think it's a fine way to make a living. I think it's a fine way to make a living. But there are individuals I could go around. Before Night Falls, Javier Bardem from Spain, that probably was as good as anything Brando's done, and he's a great actor. The Son of the Bride, the Argentine film, Ricardo Darín, brilliant. I mean, so there are certain performances, and that I think equal Brando in a way, but the overall body of work maybe is the best, the best. I think Morgan Freeman's done some beautiful work. Some of the black actors tend to be, for whatever reasons, there's a segregation process when people bring up actors. Pacino, De Niro, the Brando, this and that, but what about guys like, James Earl Jones and Morgan Freeman, Denzel, Lawrence Fishburne. I mean, these are wonderful. What Halle Berry did in that movie for me was great, and Monsters Ball. So I think overall they're better actors than ever now. Not necessarily better personalities than the old guys, but I think the bar's been raised. But you still think of Brando as Brando, but he could have done more. He could have done more.
What about English actors?
Well, English actors always get, and sometimes justifiably so, the negative rap that it's all kind of an external technique, but there's some wonderful actors in England. Now, when I did The Apostle, I tried to use, as a reality check, I tried to as a director, tried to mix the non-actors with the actors, and it's a truth check. It keeps, because once they get to a certain level, they're as good as the professional actor. And Horton Foote's very critical. He thought that Miranda Richardson was a non-actress from Texas. I said, no, she's from London, England. She played a Texan. I said, my mother, the way they do. Wonderful actress. I mean, they have very good actors in England, in Scotland, because now, once again, it's become more realistic, less of that traditional declamatory type of acting. My Name is Joe, the Kenneth Loach film, Peter Mullen, I think was wonderful in that. So talent is individual. Each country, I think, has very good actors, a nucleus of good actors. So I think that, you ask that question because they say English actors, and so forth. And Olivier had a brilliance, but I don't know if he had the interior that Brando had, the inside. But there's some very talented people in England because it's such a diverse, small country, and they have so much live theater that brings them together, this diversity of cultures, from one town to the next. The Irish, from the north, Scottish. So there's some very talented people and very good directors from there.
Well, Bob, this has been such a delight.
Well, once again, Bobby, thank you.
To be able to sit and leisurely talk with you. And
in your hometown.
Yes.
Yeah, I love Texas.
And we'll take good care of you on this DVD that I enjoyed tremendously.
I think it's a lovely film and just so truthful.
I watched it twice.
Oh,
I enjoyed
yeah.
it so much. I watched it twice.
Yeah, I learn about acting watching things like this because it's so real. You learn about behavior, and that's the beginning and the end of acting. In artificial setups is behavior. You try to approximate the real thing as much as you can.
Well, thank you for your time.
Well, thank you.
Okay.
So how many do you do a lot of these a day? But only when you're in LA, mainly, those junkets. Right?
Yeah.
That's tough. And that would be, but now you got to be careful.
You ready?
One of the
okay.
actresses that was in The Yard that Jimmy Gray directed, he said she was so mad at him because she wouldn't let him eat. He wouldn't let her cry or yell. She kept it very real,
Yeah. Okay, we're ready to go.
Okay.
All right. Okay. How did this project with Billy Joe Shaver come about?
Came about through Luciana because she saw Billy Joe when we
Okay,
did
that's good. All right. Who did the interviews?
Luciana. I was the producer. She was the director.
What do you think was the most difficult thing for Billy Joe about doing this?
Well, I think to reveal the difficult moments, but then that was, that was all part of the process.
Okay. What was the turning point in Billy Joe's life when he went from being a wild person to a born-again Christian?
I think he had many turning points, but after his wife and everybody died, since then he's accepted Jesus, and that's
Okay.
a real turning point.
Will this documentary ever be shown in theaters?
Probably not because of it's not a commercial thing. You have to find DVDs.
Okay. What other projects do you have?
Well, I'm waiting. I'm in between, hoping.
Okay. Is Luciana going to do more documentaries?
Yeah, she did. She finished one on Horton Foote. She's doing one on Bob Easton, the dialectician.
Okay, that's good. Of all the work you've done, Bob, which is your most favorite?
Lonesome Dove.
Let's see. Many people, including critics, think that Marlon Brando is the best actor of the century. Do you agree?
In some ways, I do. Yeah. Wonderful.
Okay. Let's see. Help me remember here. Let's see. Talked about Brando. What about young actors today?
I find it better than ever. The bar's been raised.
Okay. All right. Why has Billy Joe not become a bigger star?
I don't know. It's a certain self-destruction, something. It should be. I don't know.
Okay. Okay, I think that'll get it. Okay.